So today I'm going to focus on the synthesis essay, which is the first essay that you'll encounter in the free response section of the AP English Language and Composition exam. I would recommend doing this essay first when you begin the free response section because it requires you to read a bunch of materials and then organize an argument from them, which is quite time consuming, and this essay might take you the longest to write out of all the others. So a description of the synthesis essay, it says right here, you will be required to read around 6 or 7 texts. Sometimes there are also graphs or pictures, and they're all about one topic. However, each source has their own stance, and you're supposed to compose an argument that combines and also quotes at least 3 of the sources and use these pieces of evidence to support your own thesis. This is a free response synthesis question from the 2022 exam. This will give you an idea of what to expect on the exam. So first, you'll read a paragraph of background information. On this page, it's the first paragraph you see that begins with "since the early 2000s." It's just a bit of context so you know what you're going into and you know what your topic is. Next, under that, there's a list of sources and their authors. You should pay attention to the way this is written for citations later. There are explicit instructions on how to cite in the bulleted list below, but I'll talk about that later too. There are 2 ways to approach this essay. The first one is to form your opinion first and then read the sources. This will allow you to read selectively and only focus on the points that are helpful to your argument. Another way is to read a couple of sources first before forming your own argument. Either way, I would recommend having a solid argument before you're done reading all of the sources. That'll speed up your writing process later. Also, don't go over 6 or 7 minutes reading the sources. That means you get about 1 minute per source. You won't be able to absorb or use all the information anyway, which is why you should come up with a position first and then read specifically for parts that support your argument to save time. Like with the other 2 essays on the exam, the rhetorical and argument essays, I suggest that you use the simplest, most direct format of an essay, which is the 5-paragraph structure. This goes in order of an introduction that states your main point and 3 supporting arguments, and then 3 body paragraphs, each with its own supporting evidence, and finally a conclusion to wrap things up. Don't worry about whether this is complex enough for an AP exam. If you can execute the 5-paragraph structure well, then you'll do well on the exam. Once you've gathered all the evidence from the sources that you need, organize them into 3 distinct arguments. Generally, I would make my second best argument first, my weakest argument second, and my strongest argument last for the possibility of a counterargument. When drawing from your sources, you can paraphrase, summarize, or directly quote the text. You need to then cite the information in one of 2 ways. The first way is to indicate which source it is. For example, if I'm using source F, may, which is from the earlier page I showed you, I would put source F in parentheses after the information I quoted. The other way is to just put the author's last name, may, in parentheses, still after the information that I've directly quoted. The first time you read the sources, remember to scan quickly for information that could be helpful in any way. Then, if you need a specific source as you keep writing, just go back to your texts and read the ones you need more carefully. The faster you can take pieces of evidence to build your argument, the better. However, time is of the essence on the exam, so make sure that you're doing all of this quickly. Then, during the essay writing process, write your intro and first 2 points first. When you get to the 3rd and strongest argument, it's good to do a counterargument if possible. The first step for a counterargument is to find a source that holds an opposing view from the one you're supporting. For example, if your argument is that XYZ is good, and you use source A to support why that is, find a source that says XYZ is harmful. Then acknowledge that this difference in opinion may exist, that some people might not agree with you, but then assert why you think your argument still prevails and comes out on top. If you can use yet another source to prove why your argument is stronger than the counter, that's even better. The synthesis essay, in my opinion, is not as difficult as the other two essays on the exam. You may have already done it many times in school, where you read textbooks or websites and then wrote an essay. So treat the synthesis piece the same way you would for a writing assignment at school. I think it's the most commonly seen type of essay in schools, unlike the rhetorical and persuasive essays, which, although they're not unheard of, are more difficult. At least for this essay, you won't run out of things to say because you can always come up with something by looking at the sources. So some ways to practice for the synthesis essay would be to continuously write them. Find past exam questions on College Board or in your textbooks and write an essay. Read different sources that all talk about one topic and then draw from them and also cite them. The textbook, the main textbook that is for this course, The Language of Composition, has an entire section on how to synthesize sources and also a few sample essays, which I believe is more than enough to get you started. If you're planning on taking this course next May, start practicing over the summer break. The earlier you get the hang of this, the better, because it'll be very hard to write multiple practice essays each week during the school year. I've attached a few samples found on College Board, which you can also check out. They typically go in order from highest scoring essays to the lowest, so compare and contrast the essays for yourself and try to determine why some of them got more points while others are said to have made very weak arguments. The AP English language exam overall is very time-consuming and also energy-consuming. It's one of the longest exams because you have to write 3 entire essays on the spot. So it's not a bad idea to start now, and I really recommend following the 5-paragraph structure closely while laying out your points as clearly as possible.